Okay, this is notes on section 3.1 on compounding interest. Okay, so there's two formulas that you need for compounding interest. The first is if interest is compounding. By compounding, I mean paid n times per year. So perhaps interest is paid quarterly or monthly or semi-annually. You're given a specific number of times, okay? And then you use the formula A equals P parenthesis 1 plus R over N to the NT power. Okay, P stands for principal, it's your initial investment. R is a rate as decimal. N is the number of times that interest is compounded per year. And then T is the time in years that the money is in the account. Okay, now if you're told that the interest is paid continuously, you will see this word in the problem. You want to use this formula A equals P times e to the RT. And you want to remember that E is a constant and you can find it on your calculator. And you want to make sure you use that button when you're evaluating this formula. Okay, the variables are the same. P is principal, R is rate as a decimal, T is time in years. Okay, so there's three different ways you need to be able to use these formulas. The first is finding the amount of money you will have after a certain number of years. After a certain time. Okay, so we're going to find the amount of money in an account if we invest $4,000 at a rate of 3.5% for 5 years. And we're going to look at it two different ways, if it's compounded monthly or if it's compounded continuously. All right, so if we're told it's compounded monthly, right away, we know our n value is 12, and that means that we want to use the first formula. Okay, P is $4,000, that's our original investment. Our rate, you want to take your percent and move it 2 spots to the left, so 0.035, and then T is the time in years, so T is going to be 5. All right, and then I just fill it into my formula, so A equals P times 1 plus R over N and raised to the NT power. Okay, and this is how I would type it in on my calculator. You may not need these parentheses around the exponent, but when you put this in your calculator, you should get $4,763.77. So make sure that you get the same answer as I do. Very important that your answer is bigger than what you started with. Okay, so that's one way to check that you've done it correctly. Okay, so this is all the same information except we're going to compound continuously this time. So we're going to use the other formula, A equals P e to the RT. Okay, and we're finding A. So we start with $4,000, and then I find my e to the x button on my calculator. Mine is right above the ln button. Okay, so you'll have to find that on your calculator. So e to the rate times time. Okay, and when I put this into my calculator, I get $4,764.98. So a little bit more than if you compounded monthly, which makes sense because interest is being paid more often. So your money's growing a little bit faster. Okay, now the next possibility is that you might need to find an initial investment. So perhaps you know how much you want to have after a certain amount of time. Okay, so this example says find the amount of money you would need to invest. So we're finding P to have $50,000 after 10 years at a rate of 2.25%. Okay, so let's see here. We know A this time. We don't know P. My time is going to be 10. My rate is going to be 0.0225. Semi-annually, that means 2 times a year. Okay, we don't know P, so let's fill in what we know to our formula. Okay, so A equals P times 1 plus R, oops, over N raised to the NT power. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in my calculator, okay? Because this is just P times a value equals $50,000. So if I want to solve for P, then I would want to find out what this is. And when I type that in my calculator, I get 1.25075, some big long number. Okay, so P times this equals 50,000. So to solve for P, I would want to divide both sides by this amount. Okay, so in my calculator, you can either write this whole thing out, and you want to try not to round because you're going to round again at the end. You don't really want to round twice. I like to use the answer button. That will grab the previous answer. Okay, but either way, I find that I would need to start with 39,975.99. Okay, and when you're finding P, the amount should generally be smaller because you're going to be earning interest to get to 50,000, so make sure that your p-value is less than that. Okay, so this is the same story, it's just the other formula. We want to get to $50,000. Our time is 10, and our rate is 0.0225. So we want to use the formula A equals PE raised to the RT. Sorry about that reverse. Okay, and same thing. I want to evaluate this on my calculator and then divide 50,000 by whatever I get. And when I put E raised to the 10 times 0.0225, I get a similar answer. Okay, and you want to keep all these decimals because this should be a little different than this answer. Okay, so I'm going to do 50,000 divided by the previous answer, and I find that I would need to start with 39,925, oops, and 81 cents. Okay, so make sure you can get the same answer as I do on there. Okay, that's the second kind. The last kind of problem is finding yield. All right, so finding annual yield. So the thing is, depending on how often an account pays interest, you're going to earn slightly more than the stated interest rate. Okay, so it says find the annual yield. So annual is important. That means 1 year of an investment at 6%. That would be 0.06. Compounded weekly or continuously. So the thing is with yield, your principal amount doesn't matter. The rate will be the same no matter how much you invest. So I like to pretend that I'm going to start with $100 just because it makes the math really easy. Okay, so I'm going to pretend I start with $100 and I would encourage you to remember to do the same thing. Okay, so weekly means that my end value would be 52. I'm going to have my p-value be 100. My rate is 0.06. And what am I forgetting? Oh yeah, t is 1 because it's 1 year. We want to know the annual yield. All right, so if I put this in my calculator, so p times 1 plus r over n raised to the n times t. T is 1, so I'm not even going to bother to write it. If I type this in my calculator, I end up with $106.18 if I round it. This is your answer, okay? Because we started with $100. The 100 isn't part of our earnings, it's the 6.18. So 6.18% is your yield. sorry. Okay, and then continuous is the same thing. I'm going to pretend that I start with $100. My rate is the same, and my time is 1 year. Okay, so if I put this into A equals P times E to the RT, okay, I end up with, actually if I round, I end up with the same amount. Okay, and remember the $100 we already had. This is what we earned. Okay, so 6.18%. It's a little more than 6 because the interest is paid throughout the year.